Welcome to the Odd Life Podcast. That's AWED, which stands for Awake, Well, and Empowered. We're here to have conversations to inspire women of all ages to live odd AF. I'm your host, Hallie, and thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much, Kate, for being here. Kate and I met through the retreat I did down in Panama, the Sansara Retreat. Kate was the retreat coordinator down there. Mm-hmm. And I asked her story briefly about how she came to work there. And I just was immediately intrigued by your story. You recently celebrated over 10 years of sobriety, and I want to get into all that too. But let's start with the beginning, your childhood, and how that maybe shaped you as a young adult. And then we're going to get into the big shifts that happened in your life and where that took you. But let's start with the beginning of your childhood. Explain how you grew up a little bit and what took you into young adulthood.
Sure.
That's a big question. I'm surprised.
And thanks for having me on here. It is a big question. And you're like, hey, we're going to get into these big life shifts later. But my childhood was full of big life shifts. I grew up in Fort Myers, Florida, and have a older sister. She's about 2 years older. And I was a daughter of an alcoholic and addict. So that was very loud in my childhood. The way that I found out that my mom had a problem was my sister and I were playing hide and seek. And my favorite hiding spot was in the dryer in the laundry room. And so I was moving stuff around to try and open the door of the dryer and climb in there and shut the door. And when I was moving things around, something tipped off of a shelf above me and hit me on the head. And it was an empty bottle of vodka. And that was just how the story began as far as what unfolded in my childhood. It was tumultuous. It was passionate. It was tragic. It was full of love, but also what I've now at 39 years old have come to know was also full of lies. And so things that I thought I knew to be true at the age of 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, when my mother passed away, were all lies. And I am just now uncovering that today. So my parents split up when I was about 8 years old. And it was my understanding that a lot of it was due to the fact that my mother couldn't stop drinking and using. It was really kind of out of a movie, the way that it all came. It was the 4th of July. I think I was 8 years old. Yeah. And I heard my parents fighting across the house. And I was like, oh, mom's drinking again. That's all they fight about. And so my dad came and got us. And he was like, your mom's not coming to see the fireworks with us this year. And you're coming with me alone. And so we went to see the fireworks at the same park we did, sat under the bridge, and everything about that night was so eerie. It was like heat lightning, and the air felt off, and the smell felt off. Everything felt strange. And when we got home from the fireworks, we were pulling up in the driveway. It's pouring down rain. It's dark outside, and my dad's headlights pull up in the driveway, and we just see my mom coming down from the house, rolling and carrying suitcases through the rain. And when the lights hit her face is bloody and black and blue. And she is bleeding, and she's carrying our stuff to the cars. So we get out of the car and mom. And she grabs me by one arm and she's like, you're coming with me. Your dad hit me and he's abusive and we're getting you out of here. And my sister's crying and screaming. And then my dad grabs my other arm. So I'm 8 years old in the pouring rain and it's lightning and I'm being played tug of war with, literally, as my parents are screaming at each other. And I don't know what was going through my dad's mind. He just let go. He just let go of me. And that was it. And we got in the car and my mom drove us to a women's abuse shelter. And we stayed there. One twin bed on the top bunk, me and my mom and my sister, the three of us slept there. And we stayed there until my dad was court ordered out of the house. And then we went to go live there with my mom and we became her parents. We became her caretakers. I was 8, my sister was 10. And we put her to sleep every night. We tried to wake her up when she wouldn't wake up until the day we couldn't get her to wake up. And then my dad came, picked us up, and we lived with him ever since. She did not pass away then, but that was kind of a pivotal moment where we went out of my mother's care and went to live with my dad. And the story that I thought I knew to be true about my dad set a really sad relationship between he and I, where I didn't trust him and I was scared. And it took a lot away from our relationship. So that was my childhood. It was a lot.
Carrying that forward, your own relationship with alcohol, what shifted for you? Because you went from feeling fearful and seeing your mom in the state all the time to then changing into who you became at 15 when she passed, right? Can you kind of get into that a little bit?
Right. So as a young girl, my mom would bring us to sobriety meetings. She was trying to be a part of a 12-step program. And we would be the kids that sat in the room with our mom who was attending those meetings. And I went to Al-Anon, which was meetings for children and teens of alcoholic parents or relatives. And I thought I knew enough about it where I was like, it will never get me.
Yeah.
I won't let it happen, which is very naive, but I was a child. And at 15 years old, we were living with my dad, and I came home one night. I was a freshman in high school, and I had made varsity cheerleading, and my mom was a cheerleader growing up, and she had promised me she was going to come see me at that game. And so I spent that night down on the track, just looking in the stands for her, and she didn't show up. And I was like, here she goes again. I get home that night, and once again, something felt off. I remember the smell. The mulch smelled sour, and the air felt heavy. It felt like I couldn't breathe as I was pulling up in the driveway. And we opened the front door, and it was off. By that time, my dad was remarried a month. I see her off in the shadows crying. And then my dad greets me at the door, and he just looks at me. And I was 15, and he just said, "Your mother died tonight." And that was it. And he walked away. And I just went to my knees on the floor. And my stepsisters, years later, told me they had never heard a more guttural scream in their lives. And it scared the hell out of them. And that was how I found out. After that, I very quickly was trying to find a way to escape this flood of emotions that I couldn't understand. There wasn't communication. I now empathize with my dad at this age, and after all the work I've done, I empathize with him because there is no guidebook as to what do you do when your children's mother passes away? How do you handle that situation? And he had a grieving process probably of his own, but he wasn't talking to me and my sister. And I had nowhere for these feelings to go, and I had no idea how to deal with them. So I started cutting as a way to redirect the pain into something that I had control over. I controlled how deep I went. I controlled where the cut was. I controlled how much it hurt before I stopped. And I can honestly say I never wanted to take my own life at that point. It was just a way to control what I couldn't. And that was my emotions. And my dad found out that I was doing that. I had some bandages around my wrists one day, and he found out, and he threw me in a mental institution for fear that I would hurt myself more than I was. And I openly admitted when he took me there to talk to a counselor that I was scared that I was going to hurt myself more than I was. So it was a self-admittance. At the end of the day, I did agree to admit myself into this. I was 15, and I was thrown into the adult ward because there were no other teens that had been admitted at that time. So I was in a ward with a lot of schizophrenics and with a lot of people that were in a lot heavier mental illnesses than mine. When I got released from there, which I carried a lot of hurt and resentment for that situation because, once again, I now empathize with my father. However, like I had lost my mother, and then all of a sudden my dad wasn't there at all either because he didn't come visit me once during my time there. And so I just kept growing more distant, and I kept feeling more alone in the world. I felt like no one understood and no one was trying to understand. So that institution gave me a lot of medication. I was feeling so low and so dark that they gave me I think I was on 3 different medications by the time I left there. And so all these antidepressants and sleep medications and anti-anxiety, it had me feeling like a zombie, where I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel depressed. I didn't feel hurt, but I also didn't feel joy. I felt nothing. I was like on autopilot where I had no emotion whatsoever. I went back to school and I became the girl who walked down the hallway or walked into the classroom and people got quiet. Like they didn't know how to approach me anymore. There was maybe 2 other people I knew at my age that had lost a parent. So again, looking back, like people just didn't know what to say or how to deal with it. And I got invited to a party by my older sister. And I walked in the door and everyone was like, well, hey, your little sister's here. And all of a sudden I felt like a part of something for a moment. And they put a glass of red MD 2020 in front of me, a pint glass. And they started chanting chug. So I chugged it. And that was it. That was it for me. I felt alive. I felt understood. I felt confident. At 15, I felt kind of a little sexy. And I was just like, this is it. This is my jam. And from that moment, like I knew that me and alcohol were going to be friends. Like this is what I needed to help me through this pain. The next morning, I spent the whole night that night with my head in a bucket, throwing up. And the next morning we went to Burger King for breakfast. And one of my sister's older friends looked at me and he goes, I bet you'll never drink like that again. And my internal dialogue was like, are you kidding me? Like, I need a drink now. And I knew in that moment that I was different. I knew in that moment something was different about me, but I, of course, didn't share any of that. And that was kind of that really started my relationship with alcohol.
Gosh, I totally relate. Same thing. 15 years old, went to an older classmate's party and I was a novelty and I got the confidence and this bigger than life personality. And I think why a lot of this is addictive because it allows us to be the person we want to be, but can't because we have either limiting beliefs or we have people in our life, parents, siblings, whatever, telling us and showing us that we're nothing based on their behaviors a lot of times. And so alcohol is the one thing that never fails to show up for us. Obviously, this is all false and lies, but in the meantime, in this little child brain that we've got going on, that feels good. And like, whatever it takes at this point, because I'm going through this other shit that I don't want to feel.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
This just says it allows you to feel what you wanted to feel this whole time. And so I totally get where you're coming from with all that.
Yeah. It's like you feel alive in these moments, you know, at least for me, after being medicated for so long. I think of it like when I'm looking at someone's EKG heart monitor and it's flatlined, like that's how I felt. And then all of a sudden it was like beep, beep. And I was like, whoa, here I am. Like there's a little something here. Yeah.
So tell me about your journey. Obviously, big part of your life for a while. What was the moment for you? Because now you're sober, like I mentioned earlier. What was your moment that said, I'm done, no more? How bad had it gotten, and what was the thing that made you stop?
I think it was accumulation of moments. I always describe it as I think I must have been subconsciously feeling like I was tired for a long time and probably in denial of that feeling of just being sick and tired of living in that shitstorm that I was in and that chaos that I was in and that self-loathing that it had all become. That the moment was a Tuesday or like middle of the week, broad daylight, probably 11 a.m. and I was 3 sheets to the wind. I don't think I had slept in maybe 3 days. I was on a bender because my story also involves drugs. And I hadn't slept in days. And just, I guess I called my dad.
I'm so excited to introduce you to a new podcast by my friend Alicia Hill and her co-host Liam Martin. They're sharing what life is like with OCD through funny stories and real life examples, as well as coping tools. If OCD is part of your life, whether personally or through loved ones, this podcast is for you. Make sure to tune in on October 28th for the launch of the OCD Confessional podcast, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can check out the link in my show notes. Now, back to the show.
Story goes, I called my dad, I don't remember, and I asked for help. I guess I told him I couldn't do it anymore. He said I was very hard to understand on the phone. And I woke up the next morning and he was in my house. He had slept over. I don't know when he had gotten there. I don't remember anything. I do remember, however, making this last ditch attempt effort after I had gotten off the phone with him. I don't remember our conversation, but I remember getting off the phone with him and calling drug dealers immediately. I remember that clear as day, to try and just get that last hurrah before he came. Because I knew that now that my secret was out, that I had said that there was a problem and that I needed help, I knew I was never going to be able to drink or use drugs in the same way. There was always going to be a guilt associated around it. Because people knew I had admitted. My dad knew I admitted there was an issue. And so, that next morning when I woke up and he was at my house, he said, all right, what are we doing about this? Do you want to do 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days? I said, all in 90 days. And the things that were happening in my life leading up to that, I started at 15 and ended my drinking and drugging at 27. So I was out there for about 12 years. And at 15, drinking very quickly evolved into a lot of use of ecstasy and cocaine at 15 and 16 years old. So I went in really, really fast, and then went to college, and I'm completely unsupervised. And I thought that I was going to be able to manage it all. And I thought in my head, this is just the age that I'm at, and everyone does it like this. This is part of being 18. This is part of being 21. This is part of it all, until it took another turn in 2009. I got a DUI. I was living out in Colorado, and man, did I work the system. I mean, they are strict in the state of Colorado, but I found windows of, I was on house arrest on an ankle monitor. I had to go do a random breathalyzer 3 times a week, but I knew my way around that. I knew how long it took alcohol to get out of my system. And at midnight, if they called I was assigned a color. If they called my color for the next day, I knew when I had to put the drink down to get it out of my system before they closed the doors. I found every which way to keep doing what I was doing, and it just wasn't clicking that this is not normal. This is a problem. You have now been in jail for multiple things. Like before the DUI, I had shoplifting charges and this and that. And it just wasn't dawning on me. I was unemployable. I couldn't even hold friendships because I was constantly lying. I was constantly doing whatever it took to get more drink, to get more drugs. And that meant lying to you, sleeping with your boyfriend, whatever it was. I just did not care. I had no regard for anybody. I ended up moving back to Florida after Colorado just because I couldn't keep my head above water with the DUI and the finances of it all. My dad was like, come live with me and my wife, and let's get you out of this debt. You won't have to pay rent. Well, you tell an addict that they don't have to pay rent and that they just get to live there for free and work. All my money started going to drugs. I found drug dealers that took sex as payment, and I started using my body in exchange for drugs. The cocaine escalated into other things. I started freebasing. I tried meth. I tried crack. That's where it took me. I was at the point where the only people that would pick up my calls were the male drug dealers that I was having sex with in exchange. That was it. It was dark. It was really, really dark.
To know who you are now to know that's part of your story. That is so crazy.
A lot of people say that, and it does to me. It feels like a different lifetime ago. And sometimes I literally, when I say these things out loud, I'm like, did that really happen? Like, did that actually happen? Because it feels like a different lifetime ago, or it feels like a movie that I watched, but I lived it. So I'll celebrate 11 years this month, actually. And to say that I've done a 180, I think is even a downplay. It's indescribable, the changes that have taken place in my life because I chose to get sober, because I chose to live, because I chose the hard path. The easier path for me would have been staying and doing all of that and continuing down that self-loathing path of like, I am worthless. This is my life. This is just who I am. Like, that would have been easy. But there was something inside of me, something in my gut, something in my heart that was like, you are here for more than this. And it was quietly stirring, I think, until that middle of the afternoon day where I made that phone call that I wasn't even aware that I made.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, so then you're out of rehab. And of course, there's that kind of next step, real life. What did life look like for you at that point? You've gone through all this 90 days of detox, number one, but two, also the uncovering of the issues and all the things you deal with going through rehab. What did life look like immediately after?
I went to rehab in the state of South Carolina, which is where I live now. My sister picked me up after 90 days. In rehab, I worked a 12-step program of Narcotics Anonymous, along with cognitive behavioral therapy. Those were the tools I was being given during those 90 days, as well as chores, take care of your body, show up for that. Like, I needed to be taught how to be just a functioning adult. I didn't know how to make my bed. Those weren't things that I did. I didn't know how to make myself a healthy meal at that time. So I got released from rehab. My sister picked me up and drove me to Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I have been the last 10 and a half years. And she took me here because my rehab facilitator found a women's halfway house here that had a bed open. And so she drove me to Charleston. I had no money. Yes. I owed people money. I had a black trash bag, maybe a box of things. And that was kind of it coming out of rehab. And I had an interview at this halfway house, and my sister and my family was like, well, if they won't take you, we'll drive up the coast to Wilmington, North Carolina, and we'll try to find you somewhere there. Because my family was like, you're not with us. Like, figure your shit out. And I needed that. I needed that tough love. I needed to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. I wonder if things would have been different had I been babied once I got out, had someone tried to hold my hand through it. I'll never know. But I got a bed in this halfway house, and they gave me a bus schedule and a $5 bill and a sobriety meeting schedule. And they said, you have to go to a meeting every day in order to be able to sleep here at night. That's it. And so I did. I started doing that. And $5 in Charleston is 2 bus fares, only 2. But I wasn't allowed to have a job yet because I needed to gain their trust.
Sure.
So I started running to meetings, and the closest meeting was 9 miles away.
Oh, way.
So I am fresh out of rehab. I am lacing up my shoes with holes in them, and I am trucking it 9 miles to downtown Charleston to make a sobriety meeting. I started getting faster because I started running every day. Sometimes people would give me a ride home. Sometimes people would give me bus fare. But sometimes I was doing the full 18 miles a day. And so one day I made it downtown a little bit earlier than the meeting. And so I kept running, and I ran past the yoga studio. And my sister had showed me some basic yoga moves when I was in rehab because I was having a lot of anxiety build up. And she's like, you got to move it through your body. Your physical body is holding all of this. So she showed me some basic stuff. And so I ran past this yoga studio. I was like, oh my gosh, I know yoga, right? And sure enough, they were about to have a free community class. They had a little flyer on their door. So I stood outside and I waited in line on the most popular busy street. And I waited for that free yoga class because I could afford free. And I was like, I'll go to a later sobriety meeting. And it was magic. I don't even know how to describe it. I didn't even know what Warrior 2 was. I had no idea what I was doing. I was in this darkish room, but other people were sweating and moving, and I could hear people breathing, and my body felt strong, and I was breathing, and I felt a part of something, and I felt alive. Like that heartbeat on that EKG monitor that I felt when I first got drunk, I felt that in yoga class. And I was like, this is my healing. I need this.
I love that. Yeah, I love
and
that.
so I went to that yoga teacher after class, and I gave her my elevator pitch. I'm sober. I'm on food stamps. I need your help. I got to stay sober, and I need this, but I can't afford it. And she said, you could do our laundry and clean our floors once a week, and we'll give you all the yoga you want. And so I was like, sign me up. And so that's how my yoga journey began. It was finding yoga and combining it with the work I was doing in a 12-step program that was really forcing me to sit with myself and to look at myself on paper and to get honest with myself, to admit all my wrongdoings out loud to someone else, and to have a place to move all of this stored trauma and heartache and tragedy that I had in my body for all these years. That was it. That was it. That was the concoction that I was always looking for in the bottom of the bottle, that I was looking for in the bag, that I was looking for in the pipe.
Yeah.
It was there. And I was like, holy smokes, I've arrived.
Yeah. Gosh.
And that was the beginning of what is now the rest of my life, because I know that that is my program for the rest of my life. And it's incredible.
That was part of my next question, was because you not just practice yoga, but then you became a teacher. And so you went from all in on the practice, but all in on like, this is my life. So what did you have to overcome initially to go from being a student and just going to classes to then going, I'm going to teach this, and this is now your jam?
I went into my first yoga teacher training not thinking I wanted to be a teacher. Like that wasn't on my radar. I went into that training wanting to continue my healing. I was told that we were going to be talking about these deep self-study philosophical topics. And I wanted to know more about the practice that felt like it was saving my life. So that's why I went into my first yoga teacher training. And then upon graduation, the owner of that studio said, Kate, have you considered teaching? Because you're actually kind of good at this.
Yeah.
And it was just that little drop. I needed someone to see me for what I couldn't see and give me that little thread of thought of, oh, I could teach yoga. And so that's where it started. I started teaching at a very small studio where I was allowed to get messy, and no one was really watching over the style or the sequences or how I was doing it. I just got to show up and do it. And I think the only thing I had to overcome really was what a lot of teachers have to overcome, which is what we call that imposter syndrome.
Sure.
Who am I to be guiding this practice? Like, if they only knew 4 years ago what I was up to, would they actually be showing up to sit in this space with me and to be guided by my words? And so I took that imposter syndrome, and instead of it making me feel that way, I decided to just tell everyone that's who I was. Instead of internalizing this feeling of being an imposter, I started telling my students, I don't think I belong here. This is my journey. And now I'm here and I'm doing this. And wow, what's happening? And people were hooked on my story. People were then not coming to my class for the physical asana. They were coming to learn what the next chapter was. They wanted to know what I was going to talk about.
Yeah.
And that was kind of wild. So that was my way of overcoming that internal voice that was telling me I wasn't good enough to be doing what I was doing and that I didn't belong. And I was like, well, I'm just going to pour that thought a cup of tea and have a conversation with it. So that was that.
Think about how amazing that you show up authentically and real and just laying it out there, what that does for other people. Because we look at people a lot of times like leading a retreat, or someone that's on Instagram that has this big following and it's the highlight reel. We think that they have it all together. And what if everyone just came to the mat, to the table, to the screen, to social media, whatever, and just laid all their shit out, how freeing that is for everybody else. And I can only imagine what that made your students feel is just like, oh, good, I can finally just be myself on this mat and not try and be like this perfect image I'm seeing that I think is going on.
Right. It's like, hey, if this woman can take her mask off or her suit of armor off and do that on a microphone,
yes,
then I can surely lay on my mat here and do the same thing.
Yes. Yes. Something about that feels really freeing. And you're doing yoga on top of that. Like yoga is the icing on the cake of all of that, because you get to sit on that mat and just be with yourself and deal with your own shit because you've heard your story. I think that's really a cool way to connect with your students and just say it. You know, this is who I am. I'm not up here being this perfect yoga teacher. I don't have it all figured out. I was a mess a few years ago. I've never had anybody do that in that sense, but I can only imagine what your students felt like. Okay, I'm going to bring my true self to this mat too. Have you had that kind of reaction from your students?
I have. It's been really, really powerful and such an honor, you know, to be able to share space with people in that way.
Yeah.
And I think because I felt, and again, this is my story and my view of what happened in my life. Like my sister and my dad, they had their own view on the things that happened, right? But my feelings were that I felt alone for so long. For so long. And I think that's the biggest message that I just like felt like I needed to remind people in the world is we're not alone. We are experiencing different things in life, but we all are having the same emotional responses to these things. And we don't have to do life alone. We don't have to grieve alone. We don't have to laugh alone. Whatever it is, we don't have to do it in solitude. And the yoga classes became this container for everyone to do it in community. Whether it was laughing or crying or just laying in child's pose or going all into a really hard ass asana where they wanted their asses kicked because that was their healing for the day. It's either have a hard ass asana or maybe yell at my kids or whatever it is. But everyone was doing their own work, but we were doing the work collectively. And I think that is the power of yoga. And that's what happens in any yoga class, I think. And I'm just honored to be able to carry that practice and be of service to people where they hopefully feel safe enough to have those conversations with themselves on the mat.
So you take this part-time gig, you're going to yoga classes for free and you're cleaning the studio and you end up taking this to the next level. Explain where this took you, how you took this one opportunity that you were given. Where did this take you and what yoga did for you down the road?
It was actually very soon after I had started teaching part-time that a studio offered me a full-time position. And I took a chance on myself and I said, I give it 1 year to try and make it financially work because I knew I had to teach a lot of classes every week to make ends meet. And to make sure I'm not losing the love of the practice by making it a career. And in that year, I fell in love with it even more. I became in charge of the yoga program in the place I was working at. And I was building a very, very strong community. And I was sharing my journey very openly on Instagram. I was talking a lot about how sobriety and yoga came together for me to create this lifestyle and this 180 in my life, how it saved my life. And I got a random DM one day from a gentleman. He was out in Sedona, Arizona, and he said, have you ever considered hosting a yoga retreat? And I kind of laughed and I just said, I don't think anyone would sign up. Like I was a brand new teacher. And he said, I've been following your story and reading your captions. And he said, I really think you have something to say to this world. And I want to give you a chance to say it louder. And that man changed everything for me. His name is Corey Miller. He took a chance on me. He gave me a deal on the deposit And we built my first retreat. I leaned a lot on him. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't make any money doing it, but that wasn't the point.
Sure.
This was like, holy smokes, this is my life.
Yep.
People are flying to Sedona, Arizona to do yoga with me, and they trust me that I'm not just going to steal their money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what? And that was it. He took that chance on me and became that first mentor. He passed away about 2 years ago of a brain tumor, and I'll never forget him. The fact that he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Yep. He has a really, really special place in my heart.
I can imagine.
Because of that.
I can imagine.
And when I see something in someone else that I know that they can't see, I make sure that I tell them because he taught me that. And I think about him often.
I bet. And how long ago was that? Your first retreat? Then give us a timeline.
That was 2018. So that was 7 years ago. And I've been sober for about 11 years.
Yeah.
So it all happened pretty quick, all things considered, from where I was coming from. After that first retreat, I just loved it. And the feedback from the 8 clients that signed up, they were just like, this is it. Like, you're in your element.
Yeah.
And so I started hosting one a year for the next 3 years or so, maybe 2 a year, alongside my full-time job at the studio where I was directing the yoga program. And then I decided to part ways with that studio because they were going a different direction. And the more I was learning about myself and the practice of yoga, I wanted to go this way with what I was offering, and they wanted to go this way with what they were offering, and that was okay. My retreat in 2021 in Mexico, someone attended who did a lot of marketing, and she was also a yoga teacher. And she sat me down at the end of that retreat, and she once again looked at me and she goes, you have something really special here. She said, I'd been on retreats before, but yours is different. You have something to say and you have something to really offer people. Let me help you. And so we came up with a plan for 2022. I found 5 locations and we were going to do a retreat launch of all 5 retreats at the same time. And I just said, let's give it a shot. And I launched those retreats on Instagram Live, and all 5 of them sold out in 12 minutes.
No. Oh,
yeah.
My gosh.
Dead serious. It was wild. I was crying hysterically.
Like, what's going on right now? Like, what's happening?
Whoa, we couldn't keep up with the registration forms. We oversold retreats. It was wild. After I left that job at the studio, I think people wanted to support me, and that power of community that they saw me and they were going to hold me through whatever the next chapter was so strong. And they made it so apparent that I was just like, wow, this is the universe affirming that this is the path for me right now. Yep. And so that was the beginning of me doing my own LLC, my own career. And I just kind of hit the ground running from there. I made a company. I made yoga teacher trainings. I did it all. I tried to open a yoga studio. I did open a yoga studio, and the universe took that away from me very quickly in 2 back-to-back devastating floods. But I've done a lot of work, and the old Kate would have taken that as an excuse to go back to drinking, to go back to drugging. I would have taken that as a sign of defeat. Yep. I would have taken that as a sign from the universe or God, call it whatever you want to call it. That was them saying, you're not good enough for this. Shut it down. But instead, because of all the work that I'd done through a program of sobriety and through the wisdom of yoga and really doing the work of yoga, I took that as a sign of pivot. You're bigger than 4 walls. Yeah. You're bigger than 4 walls. And we're saving you being tied down to this little space because it's bigger. And I choose to believe that today because the alternative leads me back to drinking and drugging. And my life has become so much bigger and better, bigger than I could have ever written in a script, because that one day I chose myself and I chose to live.
Yeah. God, Kate. So you think about, you could have stayed the path, stuck with the teaching at this other studio, but you listen to yourself, you listen to that voice, you listen to what felt right for you. And I think that is such a huge part of, I also think being sober, because I think a lot of times when we're numbing out, we ignore those voices, we ignore the tap on the shoulder, we ignore everything inside of us. And I feel like when you're sober, we finally find our own voice. We finally hear ourselves. We're finally tuned in. And of course, yoga does that too, because you're with yourself on the mat and you're able to really tune in. But being able to turn away from a traditional yoga teaching setup to then doing it how you wanted to do it, that is huge. And what feels right for you. I'm sure people are probably listening to this, if they're in the yoga world at all. There's other ways to do it. You don't have to do it. There's not
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. And I've come to learn and understand that even more now with the gift of travel. I say this to my students all the time, and I remind myself all the time, there are so many different ways to live in this world. And when we get stuck in four walls, or we get stuck in one community, or we get tunnel vision, like that's the only way to live. The only way to live is get out of college, get married, have kids, do this, do that. And I say that because obviously that's what I thought was what I was supposed to do. And same thing, like my career is supposed to look like this. Well, who writes the supposed to? Where does that even come from? Who's dropping that in to our minds? Social media, maybe, just society in general. And it just becomes kind of the story we know until we trust ourselves to unlearn that story, to unlearn that and walk the path that we know to be true to ourselves. And that takes a lot of work.
Yeah. And even if it's not the right path, it's at least a direction to help you find the right path. It doesn't always have to be
100%.
The perfect thing. It's just something, it's like a stepping stone to the next thing. Like yoga, being the teacher in the studio, that was a stepping stone for you to figure out the next thing that was the right thing. And having Corey message you and this other gal going in your retreat. I mean, what a divine moment to have two people show up in your life exactly when you needed it, to tell you the thing you needed to hear, to trust, I am going the right direction, or this is now the next step, or okay, this is the fork in the road, I'm going to go this direction now. You know, these retreats that you do, oh my gosh, I was looking at your website the other day and just looking at all the retreats. It's Iceland, it's Patagonia, it's France, it's El Salvador. How do you find these retreats? What is your vetting process? Is it because of the experience you're going to offer people, or because you've been there and you're like, this will be the perfect setup? Like, how do you make the choice? There's so many places in the world to go, and how do you start vetting the right one?
Yeah, it's a combination. It's a great question. Actually, last night I just kicked off an online training that is the art of intentional retreat hosting, where I am guiding aspiring retreat hosts into all of this work and how to choose the places and the things and how to do it. Learn from my mistakes, please. So it's a combination, really. I'm a big believer in finding expanders for you in the world and in work and just in life. And so I find other yoga teachers from different communities who really have something that I want, not meaning the finances or something, but just their voice and what they're offering their students. I often find a lot of venues from other retreat hosts who I admire. I'm like, well, if they are leaning into this place and trusting this place, then I'm going to take their word for it. I do a lot of research, but what I try to do these days, what I found to be very successful for my demographics that tend to sign up for my retreat, I like to do a surfing one every year that gets people on the water. My clientele tend to be very physically active because I do teach pretty powerful creative vinyasa classes, what people know me for. So they're more on the active side. So I do like to offer something that has a little bit of surf every year. This year we did Panama. Last year we did Chile. So I kind of changed the surf location up every year.
Hey friends, want to take a quick second to point out a product that I'm using on a daily basis called Perfect Amino. It's by Body Health and it's one of my favorite supplements. It's composed of pure essential amino acids, the building blocks of protein, in a form and ratio that's up to 99% utilized, but without the caloric impact and without breaking a fast. It's the one protein source that provides the exact ratio of essential amino acids needed by the human body to synthesize new protein and collagen without excess amino acids. I use this product to help me maximize my workouts and hit my protein goals for the day. And now you can get 20% off your order with the link listed at the bottom of my show notes with lots of flavors to choose from, like strawberry, mixed berry, lemon lime, mocha, chocolate, vanilla, and even unflavored if none of those are your jam. And don't miss out on their seasonal option right now, pumpkin spice. And they've got lots of other products too, like creatine, electrolytes, superfood powders, greens powders, and so much more. Again, that's Perfect Amino by Body Health, and you can get 20% off your entire order when you use the link in my show notes. Now, back to the show.
I also like to do a yoga and hiking retreat every year. Those sell out very quickly. So last year we did Banff National Park up in Canada. I just got back from the Swiss Alps like 2 weeks ago. So we did Switzerland this year. Next year we'll do Patagonia. I usually like to throw one in there that's pretty cultural. So like Morocco or something like that, where people can really get dropped into a different culture. So I kind of look at the globe. It really just starts with that. I will literally look at a map and I'll be like, okay, where haven't I gone yet? And a lot of retreat hosts don't do it that way. I go to places I've never been before, and it's a big risk, but I think there is something so powerful and magical about myself and the student container entering it with the same amount of awe and wonder.
Oh, I bet.
Where I'm not there to say, well, we did it this way last year. It's none of that. We are all children on Christmas morning or in a candy shop where we are just full of awe and wonder together. And because I am feeling that same emotional response as them, I'm better to able guide the emotional and the spiritual container for the week because I'm on the same page as them. And I really let that guide a lot of the emotional conversations that we have, because my retreats do contain a big self-study portion because that's what saved my life. We do 2 asana classes a day, most days, but we also have what I call Rise workshops. And I take people through a lot of inner work while we're on retreat. So yeah, I pick venues. I try and do kind of like different areas of the world. So that way there's a little something for everybody. And it's been really successful for me.
Well, I was looking and you've got Iceland, which is going to be a little more physically taxing for somebody, probably the hiking. And then you have France, which is maybe more of a serene setting. So you have a little bit for everybody.
Correct.
And that's important, I think, because you get to hit a variety of people. Tell me what your ideal retreat goer would look like. Who would be a person that would be a great fit for your retreat?
Yeah, that's a really great question and something we were talking about last night on my call in my training. For me, this person doesn't take on a gender or an identity at all. They don't even take on a certain age. I will say I have an age range that typically shows up to retreat that's usually anywhere from their late 20s all the way to their early 60s. So I have a wide range of people that come on these retreats. My ideal person is someone who's at that space of curiosity. A lot of people that come are the people who know that there's a little bit something deeper to yoga, but they're not quite sure how to access it. They're at that point that I was at where they're like, I love this physical practice. I get a lot of emotional response out of it. I feel lighter when I walk off of my mat because I've let go of some stuff that I was carrying. And I want to know more what that's about. So it's these people who have a devoted asana practice, but they're starting to feel this emotional and spiritual awakening, but they just don't know how to go a little bit deeper. And so most of my retreats are filled with people that are curious.
I love that. How many attendees do you allow on a retreat? Is there a limit, obviously?
It depends. I have found that the sweet spot, both for myself being able to have personal touch-in points with everybody to really try and connect, and the sweet spot for my client to not feel overwhelmed is usually around that 16, 18 range. I have done bigger retreats. In Panama this year, I think there were 23 of us. In Peru a couple years ago, I hosted 28 people, and they all go well. I've learned that I don't like it quite that big. I like to keep things cohesive. There are so many different ways you can do it. This just so happens to be my way, where I curate the week in advance that keeps the container together. Meaning, I sell an inclusive price of, this is our Panama retreat. It includes surfing. It includes a jungle hike and boat trip, and it includes a massage. And so I'm curating this week so that we are all experiencing the same awe and wonder. We're all experiencing the same challenges, like surfing for the first time, walking through fears. A lot of people are fearful of surfing or fearful of being out in the water. And we're all there doing it together and watching people support one another through the fears. That's part of the retreat, that we're doing these things together so that we can show up in community. So that's kind of the way that I curate it. Other retreat hosts are like, here is the price of coming on retreat and taking 2 of my yoga classes a day. And then the rest is up to you. And that's beautiful as well, because everyone needs a little something different, and they get the opportunity to do what they need to do for their own hearts. So there's multiple ways that you can do it. I just so happen to really try and curate.
I love that. I like the fact that it's facilitating a combined experience for everybody, and that's a bonding opportunity for everybody. Do you see a community then develop after the retreat? And how do they stay in touch? Is there a container for that afterwards? Because I would think if you bond on an experience, whether it's surfing for the first time or you're hiking some crazy mountain, I would assume that would create such a bond between people, and they don't want to let that go when they go back to the corners of their own world. Do you have a container for that, or how do they stay in touch?
Yeah, a minimal container, but leading up to all of my retreats, it's usually at about the 60-day, 45-day mark, they get an email with a link to a group WhatsApp chat. And so that way we start building any last minute questions, and we're sharing excitement, and people are like, oh, well, what'd you pack? And this and this and that. So even before we get on retreat, people are becoming familiar with each other's names, and they're coordinating their flight schedules and rooming together, things like that. And so then afterwards, it's the same thing. The chat keeps going. People are sharing pictures. I have a bunch of people from different retreats all coming into town next weekend because they all made plans to come to my yoga class. And they're spending the weekend together. And it's really, really beautiful. So I have group WhatsApp chat that are still active from 2022, 2023. Everyone's wishing each other happy birthdays and things like that. So it all usually ends up coming back to my home base, which is Charleston, and people will make arrangements to meet at my yoga events and things here. But also, when new retreats launch, the WhatsApp chat go off again. Who's going on what retreat? Who wants to meet me here? And it is incredible. And I have watched so many people form best friendships. And I mean best friendships. And it is really, really beautiful to witness. It's really beautiful to watch people come together that if they were to walk past each other on the streets in Charleston, they wouldn't ever say hi to each other. So it brings people together that normally wouldn't associate with one another, and they find commonality because of these self-study workshops we're doing, where we're talking about what it's like to be a human being. And people are like, wow, I actually have a lot more in common with this woman than I thought I did. And that's really special. And it makes us more gracious human beings as we move throughout this world. It makes us have more empathy with other human beings. We don't judge people by the cover or what we're seeing on the outside anymore, because we've gotten to know that our emotions exist in every single person that's walking by us on the street.
And to be able to be a facilitator of that, how rewarding and how amazing that probably feels on your end of things, because we obviously need more of this. And how do we accomplish this? And if it can be a shared experience that they get to see the true person that's, like you said, they walking past each other, they wouldn't recognize, oh, that's someone I need to know. But because they've been in this very vulnerable space with somebody else, going through the same thing, learning about each other. I mean, imagine if we could go through life and do that on a regular basis, rather than once a year or twice a year, or how many times you allow yourself to go on a retreat and find other groups and communities that you can start being a part of that you had maybe never looked at before. But now that you've had this shared experience with somebody else that you never would have maybe connected with ever, I mean, how cool, and watch it unfold. I can only imagine how amazing it is.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And those things happen, and it's really, really powerful to witness.
Tell me, I'm going to let you, time is valuable here, but I wanted to ask you about your next retreats. What's coming up that you have availability, so that maybe you're looking for people still?
I have, let's see, I have a room that just recently opened in St. Lucia this October. So October 2025, there is one room open for 2 females. It's 2 twin beds in an ensuite bathroom, and it's going to be a beautiful kind of islandy experience. We'll sunset sail on a catamaran, and we'll do a little mountain coastal hike, and the venue is absolutely incredible. So I do have that available this year. And then in 2026, I have my surf retreat in El Salvador. I have some spots open for that. I'm very excited. I'm actually going to this venue in El Salvador in a few weeks to surf for myself and take a little solo trip, which I'm excited. So El Salvador, if you are curious about surf, it is for all levels. If you've never surfed a day in your life, if you surf every so often like myself, this is for you. So I have that available. And then I have 4 spots left for Iceland, which is September 2026. France and Patagonia are sold out for 2026, but I have 4 spots open for Iceland. Oh, and where we met in Panama at Sansara, I go back this November. So I'll be living half the year there and half the year here in the States. And they have so graciously asked me to be this year's lead host of their signature New Year's Eve retreat, which is like a big thing there. And so I will be turning 40 years old and doing what I love and hosting a New Year's Eve retreat at Sansara. And I think there's availability for that one. What a
great way to do that. That's amazing.
I mean,
again, the universe is showing up for you, sis. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
One last question. What is one thing right now that's helping you feel awake, well, and empowered?
Awake, well, and empowered. Honestly, my new love for surfing, it has become another yoga practice for me. I feel so humbled when I'm out there. I have no control over what's going to happen. I can think that I'm doing something right, and then the wave shows me something different. It is somewhere where I meet my inner child. It's somewhere where I meet all of my anger that still resides deep within me. It's somewhere where I meet my ego. And it has been the biggest teacher to me. So it makes me feel so alive, like too alive. I'm confronted with all of this in such a beautiful way and empowered, because I feel strong. And I always looked at surfer girls when I was young or a teenager, and I was always like, ooh, like that's so cool. I want to be that. And so the fact that I'm like popping up on a surfboard and riding a wave, like that empowers me. It's never too late to be the person that you want to be, to try something new on. And that to me feels really, really empowering right now.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I totally agree. I wasn't going to do it initially when I came to Sansara, and I did. I'm so glad I did, because there was 2 other women that were next to me, and one of them had kind of a fear of water. I'm not a water fan. I kind of have this fear of deep water, and we were learning in waist high water. I was like, okay, I think I can do this. And I totally agree. You're trying something, and once you get a taste of it, oh my gosh, it's sort of an addictive feeling is I can do this, and then I'm going to take it to the next level. And so I can see how you can feel that. I felt that same way in Sansara, and I wish I would have done it more because it was just awesome. I did tell my kids, I said, guess who is a surfer girl? This gal. Like I got up and I did it multiple times. And so I felt really accomplished, and I felt like I overcame something when I did it. And so that was a huge confidence booster for me too. So I get that for sure. Well, I love that.
So cool.
I love that you're going to go to El Salvador by yourself. That's so freaking amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was kind of my goal for myself this year is I get to travel so much for work, for hosting retreats. And I have to remember that it's a lot of work for me. And I never take a trip that's not associated with work. It's been a long time since I've done that. And so I'm going to do it. And I just bought a surfboard today and I'm so excited.
Love it. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much. I'm going to direct everybody to your website as well as your Instagram. And I think what you're doing is just beautiful work. And when I saw you in Sansara, it was like your energy, you pull people to you. And I can see why your retreats were sold out in minutes, because you have that open, loving soul that this is all over your face. Honestly, it's part of who you are. So I can't wait for people to learn who you are and follow along with your story. I'm just so proud of you for also your sober journey, because that was such a huge thing you overcame. And even after 11 years, it is nothing to take lightly. It is huge. Every single day you're choosing you. And I'm so proud of you for doing that.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for saying that. It's so kind. And same, you have a magnetic energy about yourself. And I am just so glad that we came into each other's orbits so that we could be pulled together and have these conversations that really matter. So thank you for trusting me to share my story. And I hope someone got something out of it.
If anything, you'll be hopefully seeing some more uptick in your retreat offerings, because I think they sound amazing. Everyone needs to go check them out.
Thank you again for having me. Have a great day, honey.
You too, sweetheart. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you found this episode either helpful, inspiring, entertaining, or just made you feel less alone, or maybe all of those things. If so, I'd love it if you'd share this episode with a friend, as well as on your social media. And if I dare ask for more, to rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform, especially Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You see, the more reviews we have, the more people we can reach, and the bigger the Odd Life community can become. You guys are the best. I can't wait to chat again next week, so we'll see you then.